That being the case, there are some scrap plastics right now that are worth close to double what virgin materials are.
Really?
Yeah. It's an interesting landscape.
So, like, what kinds? Like, what would be worth double? Right? Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 18 of the Rose Bros podcast, where the idea is to share insights from other entrepreneurs, athletes, and cool people in general, all the while enjoying some Rose Bros coffee. This episode we are joined by Kevin Rose, president of Rose Eco Projects, a company that connects buyers and sellers of used plastic products. When companies are looking to dispose of plastics such as damaged car bumpers, Rose Eco Projects connects these companies to buyers who can then use the plastic for new manufacturing purposes. In simple terms, think of taking an old car bumper and melting it down to be used in the creation of your next Tupperware container. This prevents manufacturers from having to use brand new or virgin plastic in their production process and helps save the planet from unnecessary plastic consumption. Rose Eco Projects is off to a great start and is looking to grow further as the world continues to use more and more plastic. It was a great episode as we talked about the value of certain types of plastics, such as milk jugs, the plastic recycling industry, and the politics of supporting green initiatives. Enjoy. Kev.
Trev,
Thanks for sitting down.
good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it.
Right on.
As we sit here and drink our Rose Bros coffee.
Indeed. What better way to have a conversation over a nice cup of Rose Bros?
For people listening, Kevin Rose is the president of Rose Eco Projects, and yes, you are in fact my uncle.
Indeed I am. Very proud one too.
Can you explain to people what Rose Eco Projects is?
Yeah, basically it started off as enterprise in trading waste or scrap plastic with a focus towards industrial waste plastic. Since then has kind of evolved into handling different elements within the plastic business as well. Color additives, different UV additives, things like that. And now we may be moving into some prime or virgin resins as well. So it's an interesting kettle of fish.
Have you always been into business? Did you grow up wanting to be an entrepreneur?
You know, I was thinking about that. My grandfather was a farmer out in Saskatchewan, a very independent businessman.
Yep.
My father, he was a chartered accountant. He worked in industry, in the lumber industry for many years, and then branched out on his own with his own accounting outfit, and it seemed to suit him very well.
Right.
So I expect that in the back of my mind, working
Somewhere along the way.
under my own initiative was something that always was lurking, shall we say.
So that was my grandpa. He was an accountant by training.
Yep.
So you've kind of always been exposed to that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But did you take business in university? Was it something you were always interested in, or has it just been something that evolved?
No, in university I did English Lit and industrial psychology. At the time, I suppose I was more interested in the study of the, human character, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you have to get to work. So just sort of cast about, looked for something that had something to do with investments. I'd taken the Canadian securities course, thought it would be fun to put that knowledge to work. So I wound up in the tourism industry, raising capital for a company that did things somewhat similar to vacation co-ownership, timeshare sort of thing. And that was interesting. They had a very interesting niche in the market, primarily bringing folks over from Europe to North America. That company expanded throughout North America, Canada, United States, and into the Caribbean. Effectively, the business was renting out motorhomes to folks from overseas. And that gradually evolved into renting out houseboats and then renting out yachts down in the Caribbean as well. And there was a capital program put together to finance all that, and that's what I was involved with. So that was kind of neat. Then it was into, again, staying in recreation. I moved over to skiing Lake Louise. There, did a project out at Kananaskis, real estate development. And then I moved over and looked after the marketing, domestic marketing for that outfit for a little bit. Following that, complete switch over to the mortgage industry, acquired the necessary qualifications and worked in that industry. Again, part of the appeal was simply you're working on your own a fair bit, but there's a certain number of constraints to that as well. I find what I do now, it's more multidimensional.
Right.
So it's more satisfying literally on a day-by-day basis. So
right.
About 2.5 years ago, I was chatting with a good buddy of mine, Mike Rutherford.
Yep.
He was telling me about a project they were developing over at Rundle Eco Services. And so I guess I tagged along. I helped them set up a business-to-business marketing platform wherein we were trying to sell the material that they were dealing with to Asia. We worked that pretty hard for about a year and gave it a very good shot and realized that at the end of the day, that probably wasn't the best way to approach the market. So I basically refocused on North America and started calling all over the place, basically saying if anybody wanted to purchase the product that Rundle was producing.
Just to back up, the business in layman's terms, can you explain that?
At its most simplest, I work with folks primarily here in Alberta that collect and process industrial waste plastic. My end of the enterprise is I've put together a buyer's network and a seller's network in the United States primarily and in Canada. And we've also got some overseas buyers, primarily in Asia.
Okay.
In a sense, that's where Rose Eco Projects is, or what it's developed into, is essentially a marketing firm or
connecting people.
Yeah, connecting buyers and sellers. Because oftentimes, for example, the folks collecting the material and processing it, their energies are devoted towards that. So being able to offer up, shall we say, a service that looks after the back end of the deal is effectively what I do.
So getting back to China, originally you guys looked to China, but that didn't end up working out. How did that evolution come about?
Well, it was interesting. Again, this is back in the Rundle days. When that enterprise began was just about the time that China dropped the Green Sword, wherein they
so what's that?
That was a government program. Prior to that, literally 99.9% of the world's waste plastic was shipped to China, where it was processed and recycled into various materials. They began receiving a lot of material that was very difficult to deal with. Mixed plastics, basically garbage, other kinds of textiles or materials like wood or metal mixed in with the plastic. So they basically said, okay, no more. They cut it off. All of a sudden, a lot of folks are scrambling, looking for places to send waste plastic. And then there's some shenanigans going on out there too. There was, recall about a year ago, I think it was, there was a load of Canadian plastic, or plastic that apparently had come from Canada, waste plastic, sea cans, and wound up in the Philippines. They went pretty ballistic over it. I mean, it had been there for like 2 years and no one had done anything with it. And
right.
When they opened it up, it turned out it was just full of all sorts of garbage. So it had clearly been mislabeled and mishandled all the way through.
Okay.
That took forever to make its way back to Canada. I think Catherine McKenna was still the Minister of the Environment at the time. And as it turns out, I think it made its way back to Vancouver eventually and then wound up being incinerated.
Yeah.
How's that for recycling?
Right. Which is probably why one of the reasons China shut the door on accepting so much plastic.
Now, on the other hand, they didn't close the door on single-stream waste plastic. If you could provide them with a good product that was clean, uniform, and standard, they were still doing those deals. Same thing with India, with Malaysia, most of the countries in Southeast Asia that are processing plastic.
So they'll still take a certain type of plastic?
Oh, yeah. As long as it's clean, it's, as I say, it's uniform, single stream. But, yeah, they're not interested in sorting through other folks' garbage and whatnot. And, they've got quite a domestic industry there to supply people that were handling all this material previously. Well, they didn't go away. They still have their factories, their people. I think they've just become a lot more stringent in terms of, for lack of a better term, their environmental oversight.
So the plastic you guys were collecting from industrial sites, I think most of it's from the oil and gas sector?
With Rundle exclusively. With other clients I have in Calgary, we're doing scrap car bumpers. Scrap car bumpers are made from a material called TPO, thermoplastic polyolefin.
long story short, you couldn't send it all to China. So now we're in a scenario where...
That's right. As a result of the green sword, thanks for taking me back to that, we had to refocus. North America was close at hand, so that's what I did. Looked at North America instead. Now, previously, I guess the reason we looked at China in the first place is everybody said that's where you have to go.
Yeah.
There's no point in looking at North America. Well, I found out that to be completely the opposite of the truth. After working at it pretty diligently over a few months, I had developed some very good contacts in the States, and we found there was an appetite for it. We went through a couple of different iterations. We finally wound up on the rental side securing an agreement with an outfit on the east coast of the States. That relationship has continued to work quite well. In the process, though, the folks that I was meeting in the States and whatnot were looking for other materials as well. I became aware of other folks that were collecting, sourcing, collecting, and processing scrap material as well. So I presented the proposition to them. I had a buyer's network. If they were interested, I'd see what we could do. And that's gone rather well.
Virgin plastic is made with oils. So now that one of the key ingredients of virgin plastic has gone down, how does recycled plastic compete?
Well, it's interesting. There's still markets for recycled plastic in specific applications. TPO, as I say, still has a draw to it. It's used in a number of different applications. It's the stuff that your plastic car bumpers, plastic fenders, all that kind of thing are made from. The reason it's used a lot in the automotive industry, and the reason being that it's lighter than metal, and it's moldable, and will hold its form.
Okay. So
it makes for a lighter vehicle, and that makes for basically a more fuel-efficient vehicle. So there are materials like that they've certainly suffered in value, but there's, shall we say, holding their own.
Okay.
And then there's other stuff on the recycled side, for example, PCR, post-consumer recycled. A lot of jurisdictions are starting to mandate that there's a certain percentage of PCR in a plastic product. So that being the case, there are some scrap plastics right now that are worth close to double what virgin materials are.
Really?
Yeah. It's an interesting landscape.
So like what kinds? Like what would be worth double?
Right now, milk jugs. White milk jugs.
Really?
Yep. They're made from specific food grade quality of HDPE, and that's a sought after material.
Huh. What do they make with that?
Processor is they put together an application, and they've basically sold that application to a client, and they haven't described it to me yet. So
regardless, it's being reused into some consumer product at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, it's being recycled.
Yeah.
And what's nice about these folks, I've had this conversation with them, and they said, would you be willing to provide us a certification that this material was recycled 100%? And they said, absolutely, no problem.
So in general, how many types of plastics are there out there? Are there hundreds or are there thousands?
Well, there's 7 basic types.
7.
They're all identified through the plastics code 1 through 7. After that, there's basically variations on a theme.
Oh, okay.
So you can do all sorts of things to the stock material. You can add, as I mentioned earlier, UV stabilizers. You can color it in whatever color you like. You can provide different characteristics to the material if it's going to be used for an injection or extrusion. So, there's quite a variety of, it's really quite fascinating chemistry.
Do you deal in a particular strain of plastic or type of plastic?
I tend to work with what the market is and also what my clients are looking for. High on our priority list right now would be material like ABS, the HDPE milk jug material I mentioned. I'm also doing a fair bit of work with color additives right now. As I say, what's interesting is that if it's a little soft in one area, there's usually some strength in another area.
And when someone takes the plastic into their facility, does it require much refining to reprocess it for their purposes?
Well, it's interesting you ask that question because it kind of touches on a whole topic in terms of recycling, and that's basically the cost of recycling. Folks have to factor or budget that into, shall we say, the end-of-life value of whatever the product is. Apparently, that is kind of a tough road to hoe. And there's a bunch of different ways you could approach it. But at the end of the day, especially in a province like Alberta, where things are so spread out, if you're going to collect waste pipe from Fort McMurray and try and get that to market, well, trucks don't go back and forth for free.
Yeah.
Guys don't drive those trucks for free. Guys that load the pipe on the trucks don't do that for free. I don't know whether there's a common denominator like business tax credit or something of that nature that can be applied, whether they're going to bring in more producer responsibility. It'll be interesting. But again, especially in the current environment with COVID and whatnot, plastic has been shown to have terrific value.
Yeah. I saw an article where they said plastic use is all-time high right now.
Certain kinds of it, yeah. And it reminds you of why plastic was, in a sense, developed in the first place.
Right.
It's a light material. It provides terrific hygiene for packaging and whatnot. It's been revolutionary. So post-COVID, I think there's going to have to be a lot of thought devoted towards the whole idea that, look, this stuff has value. We just have to figure out a way to deal with it on the back end.
Right now, as it stands, how much plastic that is used in consumer products is brand new versus recycled? Is it like night and day?
Yeah.
Most consumer products are made from new virgin plastic.
Yeah, from new virgin plastic.
So you think that's a huge opportunity for...
Yeah, especially if you've got the right people at the on the processing side, they can provide when you mix recycled with virgin, usually it's on a percentage basis, so it'll be say 70-30, 80-20, something of that nature, 90-10, with a majority leaning towards the virgin. But you can produce a plastic with the recycled content that has all the performance characteristics of the virgin. And in a normal environment, that argument makes a ton of sense, simply because recycled plastic is so much cheaper than virgin. Usually there's about 25% difference there.
So if you can show to somebody who makes whatever that your recycled plastic is just as good as virgin plastic, why wouldn't you?
There's, in the manufacturing side of the industry, there's a certain, I'm not going to say slight, but it's not viewed as in the same light as prime or virgin material is. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. Slowly but surely, especially when you can show them
right,
not only the economic side of it, but simply the performance characteristics of the material. You can provide them all the technical data and the safety data on the material, and terrific opportunity there. So.
Does that involve a lot of sales? Pitching the recycled plastic to a client, you have to explain there's merit to this product?
That's not so much from what I do, because I'm working basically business to business rather than say in the sense of business to business. I'm simply moving the material to a processor. They're the folks, in a sense, that have to come up with an application or a product and then sell that on to, say, some folks that are going to manufacture plastic lumber, plastic furniture, picnic tables, what have you.
So processors, what would be an example of a processor? Are there companies out there that that's all they do? Or?
Yeah, there's quite a wide variety. What I find interesting about the plastics industry is there seems to be quite a few layers to it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to tell you who my processors are, because that'd be kind of giving away the farm. But
yeah, but that company exists.
Oh, absolutely. They've been in business for 25 years. They're a powerhouse. And they're a very good model to follow as far as how to work in the recycled plastics industry. Nice. They're real straight shooters. They'll tell you the feedback they provide is outstanding.
Yeah.
They emphasize, look, if you're going to bring plastic to us for recycling, it has to be clean. That's all we ask.
Right.
That's kind of a mantra in the recycled side now is, just make sure it's clean and we can work with it.
Do city landfills and government landfills do this too? Or what happens to plastic for places like that?
Well, it's interesting you say, because landfills are actually competing with recycling. Their business model is based on taking material in and then basically leaving it there for the next 1,000 years.
Because they get paid to take material in.
Yeah, that's what their business model is based on. We really don't see that. The folks I work with, whether it's Rundle or Friendly Earth Environmental, our view is that it's better recycling the material back into society, into productive use rather than dumping it in a landfill. And one of the biggest vicarious benefits of doing that, aside from protecting the environment, is the offset, the CO2 equivalent offset factor that you're producing by recycling plastic. The cost of getting oil out of the ground, moving it to a refinery, having it refined, moving it off to a processor, well, all those lifting costs are basically
producing carbon.
Yeah, and you avoid all that by recycling the material. So last year, the amount of material that Rose Eco Projects recycled would have been equivalent to taking 33 cars off the road for the year.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you apply for carbon credits? I know this is a bit of a contentious issue, right?
It's a bit sensitive, yeah.
Why not?
Well, the initial carbon trading sort of structure that was set up through the UN and...
Actually, let's back up. What is a carbon credit?
Well, what I'm doing is CO2 equivalents, so carbon dioxide equivalents, and carbon dioxide has been recognized as a GHG or a greenhouse gas, apparently contributing to the global warming.
Yeah, that's another discussion.
That's a complete another discussion. Yeah. However, I mean, it is what it is. That's the playing field right now. So in terms of that playing field, there were a number of initiatives that tried to, in a sense, utilize that UN model. It was a big exchange in Chicago for carbon credits that failed miserably. Mm-hmm. There's the California program between Quebec and Ontario. To be honest, I'm not sure where that's at these days.
But if you as a business owner are given carbon credits, how does that help you?
Before we get there, so on the industry side, what takes place is, for example, a material is harvested here in Alberta, but it goes to the United States for processing. So in the original carbon trading scheme, as it was set up, in order to qualify or to claim a carbon credit or a CO2 credit, you had to recycle the material in the same jurisdiction it came from. There's a principle or a clause called additionality. What that means is that all that material that, say, Rundle or Rose Eco Projects has sent off to the States or over to Asia for recycling, we can't claim credit for. So a parallel, what I see is a parallel developed, and that's effectively the whole concept of ESG, environmental social governance. And the challenge to that side of things is establishing a uniform and coherent oversight body. Right now, there are a number of different organizations that have put together really great programs, but you're not in a position, the importance of those programs has been more to bolster, shall we say, investor/financial confidence.
Right. It's almost like self-policing in a way.
In a way, yeah. So,
by the way, ESG is
environmental social governance. Right. It's so, as I say, that's become it's like a 2-track system that's developed. And if I have my way, I'll develop a third way, and that's simply taking note of. I mean, it's not rocket science. If you moved X amount of or 40,000 pounds of plastic, and this is where it went, that's a very easy thing to document using the CO2 equivalent factor calculators. You can very easily determine a commonly recognizable number.
Okay.
So I think it would be fun to simply take that to the internet, offer people the opportunity to cover their own carbon footprint for a year by purchasing the carbon credits directly from us. And if they're gone, they're gone.
And carbon credit, does that help with taxes, or how does that benefit?
In this case, it would be purely for their own, shall we say, their own personal social conscience.
Okay.
If you want to do something personally about this, if you're feeling badly about, having to drive your car and sit in rush hour and contribute to the mess every 2 or 4 hours a day, here's something you can do about it.
Huh.
And we'll see. It might work. It might not. The mechanisms that they have in place aren't capturing any of the activity, for example.
Do you think the government's going to develop programs that make people use recycled plastic or take it out of the landfills for use? Not taking it out, but instead of putting it in the landfills.
Yeah, as an alternative to it, we would certainly like to see it go that way. I think most folks that don't want to see the material lying around for the next millennia don't want to see that happen.
Yeah.
I think over the last decade or so, even the last 30, 40 years, there's been a movement towards an ecological sort of
just a
appreciation or consideration, if you will. Yeah, and it's been growing in more and more importance. And I think as a society becomes more sophisticated, it has more time to look at things like that.
Right.
So in a sense, it's a healthy measure of where our society is at, in the sense that we're concerned about it. I see, again, because of the value of plastic that has been shown through COVID, and I mean, it's just not here, it's worldwide.
Yeah.
As I say, the folks are going to have to pay attention to creating a back-end mechanism that moves that material back into the market. How that will happen, for example, with PCR, if it's government mandated, you'd probably see a jump in pricing. For companies that are involved in, say, the collecting and the transport of the material, getting it from Fort Mac down to a processor in Edmonton or Calgary, those guys, they can tie it to an environmental outfit, and you should be able to do that via your contracts. Maybe offer them some kind of a business tax credit, because, you know, whether even, for example, local auto body shops that are participating in the car bumper program, a lot of insurance companies pay for that. They pay end-of-life value for that bumper. There's some great outfits out there that are AMA, Aviva, Wawanesa, TD, Travelers. These guys are terrific, living up to their environmental, social governance programs.
So they'll pay the auto body shop to dispose of the bumper.
Yeah,
or recycle it.
So this program, there's a cost for the collection. You know, you got to put a truck together, drive up, say to Red Deer, pick it up, and then bring it back to Calgary, and you got to pay a couple of guys to drive the truck up and back, and then you have to have a yard that you can store the material in until you can process it and then move it out to the market. So all that stuff costs money, and there are some fixed costs. For example, with the auto body shops, they're very gracious in this program in covering the, shall we say, the bin rental or the bin pickup costs. It's not much. It's like $100 a month, but it's, especially in COVID, under the COVID regime right now, folks are looking to cut costs everywhere they can. Right. So we've actually lost a few outfits because of that. We're hoping they'll come back when, you know, the situation returns to normal. But yeah, it's a curious thing.
So what do they do if they don't use you to recycle the car bumper? They just throw it in the dump?
That's about the only place it can go.
So every day there's thousands of car bumpers that go into the dump and just sit there forever.
They're going into a dump somewhere and they're sitting there for forever. Yeah. That's the frustrating part, when there's a viable alternative. Yeah. If we can get folks like Intact or Desjardins on board, we'd have a pretty good coverage across the country. But, you know, some folks are
just hesitant.
Oftentimes you wonder if they're just paying lip service. But to be honest, at the corporate level, with most major companies now have an ESG platform. So you can hold them accountable very quickly. You can call them up, and from an investment point of view, if environmental social governance is important to you and you're moving, you know, I don't know, a hedge fund's money around, given one outfit that is walking the walk and the other outfit that's only talking the talk, who are you going to put your money behind? Yeah. From their investors' point of view, they're going to want guys that are invested in it and can demonstrate it.
When did all this start to evolve, the economics of recycling plastic? Because, like, why hasn't someone done this before?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I've only jumped into it in the last 2.5 years, and what I've learned over that time has been very interesting. You know, you see that, in a sense, there's a lot of lip service paid to it. For example, the federal government, their Ocean Plastics Charter and whatnot, and some of Science Canada or Science Industry Canada and whatnot in their programs. You sort of wonder, all the fundamentals are out there if we could address a couple of common issues. But no, these guys are looking for technical solutions to solving the PET problem. Well, there's a lot of people working on the PET program. PET is a type of plastic. Okay. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And it's a very difficult material to recycle. But a lot of interesting work has been done, and particularly in the area of chemical reduction, to make that material much more reusable, shall we say.
I'm just curious why more people haven't been pursuing this business of recycling plastic in the past. Like, what's changed?
Well, there's actually a fair number of people involved in it. there's just not a lot of press devoted towards it.
Maybe we're just starting to learn about it.
And with any luck, the media will pay attention and provide some exposure to some of this activity that's going on. Like, there's a terrific outfit run by a terrific guy down in Lethbridge, recycle plastic and make plastic lumber. There's some folks, I forget the name of the town, but they put together a terrific program, and they're working with the Alberta ag and beef producers and whatnot, and they're reprocessing ag film.
Huh.
There's, some huge operators in the province like Nova and Dow. We produce the feedstock for it. So there's actually a fairly active plastic industry in Alberta, but it's very much under the radar.
They make plastic, right? But the business of recycling plastic, has that been around for a long time?
Oh, yeah. One of the fellows I work with, he's been doing it for a good 25 years. And
really,
part of the problem in the recent times has simply been the crash in pricing. You used to get, literally double what you're getting now for some materials.
Because the price of oil has fallen.
Yeah.
But not all plastics, because some of the plastics you're doing have increased in value.
Some plastics are easier to process as well. For example, acrylic. Most of the acrylic we moved went offshore because these guys had the facilities to process it. When you break it down and basically grind it up and whatnot, it produces a gas that can be adverse. So, but they have the facilities to be able to do that. So they'll take that material, and the only downside to it, as I say, is that prices have fallen substantially on that particular kind of extrusion grade acrylic.
Where do you see the opportunities going forward then for plastic recycling in general, without giving away any trade secrets? Is there?
No, all over the place. As I say, we have to figure out a way of living with plastic because we know how important it is in terms of protecting our health and our hygiene.
Yeah.
Our food, it's such a huge part of our life. And one of the reasons it is because it's very inexpensive.
Right.
And you can work with the material well. We have to build in there somewhere what you do with the package after you've opened it.
Yeah. Hopefully start using more recycled plastic in producing products right off the bat.
I kind of think that this PCR thing is going to probably get more momentum. We'd like to see an analogous or parallel activity take place along the lines of supporting the infrastructure that facilitates recycling the material.
I see.
So, as I say, that's where business tax credits with respect to if you're involved in a program and you can, if you demonstrate that through an agreement with an approved recycler sort of thing,
right,
then that's all the paperwork you need. Keep track of your numbers through the year and submit it at the end of the year sort of thing. If we could find a business tax credit, I think that's associated with recycling.
Yeah.
I think it would bring a lot of stranded assets, as we call it, into play. If it's up in
way up north somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of
Fort
the last place I tree planted way up there. But yeah, if it's off in the far reaches of the province, how are you going to get it back?
Yeah. So tax credit would help.
Yeah, for example, covering the cost of the transportation simply to move it from point A to point B.
Are there many available now?
None that I know of.
None. Really?
No.
That's amazing.
No, as I say, there's a lot of people talking about it, but in terms of concrete structure that business can use, employ, and make it work in the fashion that it was designed to.
So how do you get government support to get a tax credit written? Is it hopefully some politician wakes up, or do you have to lobby, or how does that work?
Probably a combination of the bunch. Media attention, I think getting a buzz going as far as water cooler conversation, if you will.
Maybe this podcast.
Yeah, a podcast exactly like this. The fellow I work with over at Friendly Earth, he was on with Danielle Smith the other morning. I've suggested they give Mike Rutherford a call too, and so perhaps they'll take us up on that.
Yeah.
But after that, talking to your MLA, talking to your MP, encouraging the various associations to think in those directions. And, to be honest, a lot of them have already put a ton of legwork into that. Pace of, shall we say, implementation of real policy, though, has been very, very slow.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just taking their time to think their way through it. I think personally that, they could be a lot more expeditious with that. But
wouldn't it be nice if you didn't need a tax credit though for that sort of business? Like you never needed a tax credit to drill for oil. Just evolve. It was a good business.
Absolutely.
Do you think
there's enough of a profit margin there to do that?
Yeah. Do you think that's possible with recycling plastic?
Possibly. If the price of oil goes through the roof again, basically the feedstock for plastic will rise with it.
Right.
And all of a sudden, recycled plastic will have a better value proposition to it. Plastic is no different than, it's not special in any sense, and that it will follow the ups and downs of an economy like any other material will.
Yeah. Thanks, Kev. We'll leave it there. Any special events coming up for Rose Eco projects or any announcements?
No, not at this time. We're just going to keep grinding away, see how things develop. We've been, as I say, it's literally every time you pick up the phone, something new happens. So it's been kind of look forward to more of that. So
cool. Well, thanks, Kev. I appreciate it. We'll leave it there.
Great. Thanks, Trev. Great coffee.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. If you liked what you heard, head over to rosebros.ca where we will have upcoming episodes. You can also find our coffee and chocolate there, where we plant one tree for every bag or bar sold through our partnership with One Tree Planted, a non-for-profit organization focused on global reforestation. Otherwise, until next time, happy coffee drinking.